Tonight, controversy and criticism over a United Nations resolution and its impact on the Israel-Hamas war. The push for more aid, but no ceasefire.
It's a step forward, but not a big step forward.
And pleas to release remaining hostages.
We feel their pain, and we want them home.
As Israeli troops launch more deadly airstrikes. A year of cyber insecurity.
Artificial intelligence is taking a problem that was already significant and making it a lot worse.
The warning from experts as Canada struggles with a surge in cyber attacks. Plus, from Barbie's billion-dollar blockbuster to Taylor Swift ticket troubles.
I'm not getting tickets.
We kick off our countdown of the top 10 stories of 2023 with a look back at Hollywood's highs and lows.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. Just a day after a heavily negotiated resolution for desperately needed aid to Gaza was approved by the UN Security Council, Israel continues its military campaign. Officials have issued warnings to evacuate new parts of central Gaza for what's expected to be a widening ground offensive in the enclave. The Hamas-controlled Ministry of Health says more than 200 people have died in the past 24 hours in Gaza. Among those killed, a veteran UN aid worker and more than 70 members of an extended family. CTV's Jeremy Sharon reports.
More destruction and further devastation in Gaza as Israeli troops press on with their operation. On the heels of a new watered-down United Nations resolution aimed at immediately speeding up deliveries of aid, but it doesn't call for a ceasefire.
Who will enforce this resolution to provide for these humanitarian entries? It certainly won't be the United States, and Israel is not going to let this happen. So it's a step forward, but not a big step forward.
Doctors Without Borders has condemned the UN's move, calling it nearly meaningless. Other humanitarian organizations support the resolution.
It is a positive step to have some sort of agreement between member states on some wording and on need to bring in humanitarian assistance. However, what Gazan people need is ceasefire.
It's not yet clear how or when aid deliveries will be accelerated. The United Nations says more than 500,000 people in the enclave, a quarter of the population, are starving. Millions are displaced. This man is one of them, living out of his car. This car is my entire life, he says. If I die, along with my kids, we'll die in this car because there's no shelter available. Despite mounting international calls for a ceasefire, Israel is ramping up its offensive on the ground and from the air. This is the aftermath of an airstrike at a refugee camp in central Gaza. More than a dozen were killed here. You dropped a bomb on peaceful people. Most of them were kids, this man says. While in Tel Aviv, thousands gathered tonight, protesting their own government and Benjamin Netanyahu, also pleading for the release of hostages still held in Gaza.
We feel their pain, and we want them home.
Now, Hamas said today they've lost contact with a group responsible for 5 of those hostages due to bombardments in Gaza. Heather?
Jeremy Sharon in Ottawa. Wounds of its worst mass shooting still fresh. The Czech Republic observed a national day of mourning today. Bells rang across the capital as people stopped for a moment of silence and paid tearful tributes to their loved ones. A makeshift memorial became a sea of red and white candles. A 24-year-old gunman killed 14 people at a Prague university before turning the gun on himself. When considering what is behind a worsening affordability crisis for buying or renting a home, the federal government can no longer ignore its approach to immigration. Ottawa is facing increased criticism over the rapidly growing population and a housing supply that is failing to keep up. CTV's Colton Prale explains.
Ottawa is admitting to the housing strain Canadians are already feeling.
It's clear that does put pressure on the system and particularly our housing needs.
Canada's population boomed by more than 430,000 people in the last quarter. An overwhelming majority of them are non-permanent residents, but all of them need housing. And as the population grows at one of the fastest rates in decades, demand for housing is vastly outpacing supply.
We've had a growing gap now for many years. So let's say there's average 20,000 new people coming to Ottawa every year. We're only building 6,000 to 8,000, units.
Now an increasing number of newcomers are competing over slim pickings with no safety net if they can't find housing.
Everybody wants to go to Canada, but nobody talks about the housing situation. Nobody talks about the difficulty in getting jobs. So once you end up there, you're pretty much screwed.
Experts say temporary workers are crucial for Canada's productivity, but there needs to be a balance.
It's very easy to make a compelling argument that immigration is necessary to sustain our standard of living, but also help improve it too. Again, it's what's the right number.
According to the Bank of Canada, an additional 250,000 new housing starts every quarter is what's needed to keep up with population growth, even as the country is already facing a shortage of 3.5 million homes.
We're now going to have nearly 1 million additional homes compared to what we were on track for just in September. So we are doing everything we can.
Ottawa hasn't detailed specifically how it will limit the influx of temporary residents, but in recent weeks the government has taken aim at colleges and universities, comparing them to puppy mills for international students and threatening to pull federal support to provinces if action isn't taken. Heather.
All right, thanks, Colton. Health officials in Manitoba are issuing a familiar plea for people to stay home when sick. The respiratory virus season is putting added pressure on the healthcare system, with ICUs across that province over capacity.
And that's including pediatric ICUs and children requiring that critical care. And it's concerning at this point because we've likely not reached a peak.
Doctors across the country are dealing with an influx of patients and warning of a spike in illness among children. CTV's Shannon Patterson has more.
Now that kids are off school and most adults have time off work, the holidays are in full swing.
There'll be a lot of parties and a lot of get-togethers, a lot of family reunions. So I think we just need to be extra careful.
Careful not to get sick. For emergency room doctors, 'tis the season for increased patient loads, but not on the 25th.
Christmas itself is sort of the calm before the storm. Boxing Day is the storm. It's almost always one of our busiest days of the year, if not the busiest day of the year.
That's because so many other healthcare options aren't available.
A lot of doctors' offices and walk-in clinics and urgent care clinics will be closed over the holidays. But if you are sick with a respiratory infection, and we're seeing a lot of respiratory infections right now, most of the time you don't need to see a doctor.
But there are exceptions. BC is seeing a big spike in invasive group A strep in children and teens. There have been 51 cases in 2023. In a typical year, there are only 20.
This type of bacteria, particularly if it causes a more severe infection, we'll sometimes see that prolonged fever, or sometimes we'll see a fever with a rash.
A child with these symptoms typically needs treatment.
In these more concerning scenarios, it is important that they be assessed by a primary care provider or at the emergency department.
For kids and adults, prevention is the key to staying healthy.
Consider getting your vaccine. Stay home if you're sick. Someone shows up for your holiday party and they're unwell. Make that very difficult decision to have them celebrate at a distance from you.
It's inevitable some holiday gatherings will become super spreaders for COVID, flu, and the common cold.
An upswing is usual, but I think it could be managed if we do things right as we've learned to do.
Shannon Patterson, CTV News, Vancouver.
The race is on to restore power for thousands in New Brunswick who have been off the grid for 5 days following a powerful storm.
Hopefully by Christmas, but we're just crossing our fingers that that's going to be the case.
Power crews are still finding new damage in some areas since Monday's torrential rains and vicious winds that left over 100,000 people in the dark at its peak. As a Quebec teachers' strike drags on, parents and child experts are worried about the profound impact on kids. Two unions have reached a proposed settlement with the government, but they could still join the 66,000 other teachers on the picket lines. CTV's Matt Gilmore reports.
With the holidays now here, it's a chance for parents to finally recharge.
Pretty hard for everybody, and I'm hoping that the negotiations pan out and that we can go back to school in January.
Students in Montreal's French sector have been off school since November 23rd. The FAE union, which represents about 40% of Quebec teachers, is currently in a negotiating blitz with the government. Buoyed by the proposed settlement on working conditions reached by the Common Front teachers yesterday.
Well, there's some gains in our three major demands, and we think it's good enough to bring to our membership to ratify.
But there's still no agreement on salary, and the Common Front has threatened an unlimited general strike in the new year.
I panic a little, yeah, for sure. However, I support the teachers, and I really want them to get what they need.
Recent polls suggest a majority of Quebecers remain behind the teachers. On the other side, the government has seen its popularity plummet.
It tells me that the people are angry.
Political analyst David Hertel says for now, the unions appear to hold the upper hand. But he says that support won't last forever.
There's a real sense that if this isn't resolved by January 9th, the date where normally kids would go back to school, maybe the wind would change.
There are real concerns about the impact the strike is having on students.
It's going to be 8 weeks of school closure for some kids. So that's very hard to come back from that.
Sylvain Martel says once the labor dispute is over, Quebec needs to have a debate about whether schools should be considered an essential service.
It's certainly a reflection that we have to make collectively.
Teachers represent less than a third of the public sector workers that are either on or threatening an unlimited strike in the new year. Matt Gilmore, CTV News, Montreal.
Coming up, sounding the cybersecurity alarm.
It only gets worse from here.
How Canadian companies can stay ahead of hackers. Plus, the glowing Griswold tribute that started in one man's garage. If your personal information or company was compromised this year, you're not alone. Experts say 2023 was the worst year on record for cyber attacks across Canada. CTV's Kamal Karmali explains.
Cyber attacks, crippling hospitals.
We are not the first healthcare system to be struck by these bandits.
Liquor stores and libraries.
2023 is by far much worse than any other year.
The Toronto Public Library still partly paralyzed after hackers stole personal information in a ransomware attack.
We're estimating about $9 billion in losses just from scams across Canada, and that's about $1 billion more than last year.
The surge in cyber attacks partially because now anyone can access ransomware kits on the dark web.
You don't need to know what you're doing. Just buy one of these kits online. Next thing you know, you could be launching your own attacks.
Artificial intelligence also playing a role, deepfakes mimicking faces and voices, and programs that can now do the hackers' work for them.
It's literally AI that will go through systems and websites looking for vulnerabilities and then write code to exploit those vulnerabilities.
It's all about to get worse in 2024 for those companies who choose not to pay out hundreds of thousands of dollars, in some cases millions, to update cybersecurity software.
We will continue to underinvest in cybersecurity. Cyber criminals will continue to be better resourced.
But even if they do invest, they're still vulnerable.
As long as you can just go and mass update all of these computers in one shot, because it might break things. So they have this window of time to exploit you.
Meanwhile, the Toronto Public Library says its website and public computers won't fully return to service until late January. And with the growing complexities of these attacks, many companies now keeping a close watch on their software systems in the new year. Heather?
All right, Kamal, thank you. Still ahead, the glitz and gaffes, Hollywood's roller coaster ride in 2023.
Closer I am to find.
The world of music is mourning the tragic death of country musician Laura Lynch.
It's a long, thin line.
Lynch was a founding member of the Dixie Chicks in 1989. She was killed in a head-on crash yesterday near El Paso, Texas. The Chicks, as the band is now called, shared their condolences and said she was instrumental in their early success. Lynch was 65. Navigating another year in the entertainment industry has seen great loss along with much success. As we reflect back on 2023, there are a few artists and actors who stand out. Tonight, we begin our top stories of the year, and in the number 10 spot, entertainment. CTV's Vanessa Lee reports on what the last 12 months have been like in the spotlight.
It's clear crowds were ready to gather in 2023. Singing and dancing their hearts out, eager to connect with their favorite stars up close and personal. Dozens of artists hit the road, bringing their music to sold-out venues across the globe. Tickets for Taylor Swift's Eras Tour were so sought after, Ticketmaster's website crashed.
I'm not getting tickets.
The company blaming bots.
We apologize to the fans. We apologize to Ms. Swift. We need to do better.
Swift was everywhere this year. Her record-shattering world tour boosted local economies, generating close to $5 billion in the U.S. alone.
Welcome to the Eras Tour.
And the movie about her tour is the most successful film in concert cinema history. Her legions of fans, known as Swifties, follow her every move, including her love story with football star Travis Kelce. The 12-time Grammy winner was named Time's Person of the Year.
She's both the author and the main character of a story that completely engrossed the world.
It seems some fans forgot how to behave at live shows after the pandemic, with several instances of concertgoers throwing things on stage.
I think sometimes people are kind of doing this to kind of have their own little 15 minutes of fame.
Hey, Barbie. On the big screen, Barbie stole the spotlight. The empowering take on the iconic doll was the highest-grossing film of the year, earning more than $1.3 billion worldwide.
Barbie first.
And Oppenheimer at 6. Why? Why?
Barbie premiered the same weekend as Oppenheimer, setting up a battle of blockbusters.
This is a national emergency.
Fans flocked to theaters for the Barbenheimer double feature, mixing the serious and the seriously fun.
Why are these men looking at me?
There were lineups to see both of those movies, and lineups that lasted for weeks. And what that tells me is that people are thirsty to be entertained. They want something a little different. And I think that Hollywood is starting to figure that out now.
But for months, there were no lights, cameras, or action in Hollywood. Both writers and actors were on the picket lines together for the first time in decades. Writers went back to work after 146 days, approving a new contract that includes wage increases and safeguards against artificial intelligence.
I feel really proud that we stuck to our guns and didn't take any old deal that was slapped on the table.
The actors' deal also includes better pay and working conditions, along with protections against the studio's use of AI.
If we don't have clear rules that say only human actors can be used as background acting talent, not AI, I don't get a job.
I'm not great at the advice. Can I interest you in a sarcastic comment?
As gains are celebrated, Hollywood is mourning irreplaceable loss.
Is there a reason you're interrupting me mid-soup?
Including actors who made us laugh.
For a relationship to work.
Congratulations, you've saved the day.
Those who ruled daytime TV.
Fly
and unmistakable voices. As a result of the lengthy writers and actors strikes, there will be fewer movies released in 2024 as Taylor Swift brings her Eras Tour to Canada, with stops in Toronto and Vancouver next fall. Vanessa Lee, CTV News, Montreal.
After the break, a glowing tribute. The man and the magic lighting up a Regina neighborhood with a dazzling display. Finally for us tonight, a man who considers himself the Clark Griswold of his Regina neighborhood. 6 years and tens of thousands of lights later, he's made a pretty impressive creation of a Christmas classic. CTV's Allison Bamford explains.
Just like Santa Claus has his workshop, Trevor Allen has his garage.
Christmas has always been my favorite season, and once September, October starts, I will be generally out the garage every night.
It's where he spends hours designing and building new props like fences and trees on a machine he 3D printed.
I haven't bought a single prop, it's all been handmade by myself.
All in preparation for this. 76,000 lights sequenced to 11 songs, all controlled on his phone. It's a holiday tradition going on 6 years at the Allen house, turning the front yard into a scene straight out of a Christmas classic.
National Lampoon's inspiration behind this, having to light up the entire neighborhood with the lights.
Allen has the brightest house on the block by far, and it draws in thousands from across the city throughout the month of December.
It's kind of introduced our neighborhood to the Christmas season. We've had it where kids are lined up here in front of here, and it's nice. It's beautiful.
The first few years were about making it bigger and brighter, creating more props and adding more lights. Now, Allen says it's about fine-tuning his music sequences.
When I'm doing the song sequencing, I'm playing the song hundreds to thousands of times over and over because I go every millisecond throughout the song, that by the time I'm done the song, I just don't want to hear it anymore.
While Allen might get sick of the songs, it's a Christmas tradition he hopes never grows old. Allison Bamford, CTV News, Regina.
Quite the display. Before we go tonight, I want to thank Sandy Ronaldo. As I officially take over the weekend anchor desk, it is a true honor and privilege to deliver this newscast and to follow in the footsteps of a pioneering journalist. You've spent more than 3 decades with Sandy on weekends. I am inspired and grateful for her support, and I hope you'll continue to join me here every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I look forward to spending my weekends here with you. Have a good evening, and I'll see you again tomorrow.